Chapter 1051. He's just afraid that you'll hold him up. Then, are there any other factions? Like a fourth faction? Of course, there's a fourth faction. The fourth faction is from the internal clan. You don't have to worry about that. Why? Because the fourth faction is mine, he said calmly. Lin Che understood. So that was the case. Lin Che thought to herself that it was unexpected for a family to have so many cunning people. But this was something she had never thought of in the past. Previously, Lin Che had truly never come into contact with such faction wars. The wars had probably been at their most intense before Gu Jingze had become the head of the household. Furthermore, it was precisely now that Gu Jingze even sent her abroad to take refuge. Thus, Lin Che had actually lived in the Gu family but had never experienced the strong clan atmosphere of the Gu family. Now, she had been implicated and involved in the matter because of the position of mistress. She had no choice but to face a situation as complex as this one. Gu Jingze said, "You don't have to worry. Even though they have many cheap tricks up their sleeves, they can only execute these tricks on the condition that they don't endanger the entire clan. That's how it is for the Shui family. It's also the same for the second clan where third uncle is. Thus, their open rivalry and covert fights won't affect us that much." Lin Che knew that at most, the position of mistress would be snatched away. In actual fact, if not for Gu Jingze, she would not want to vie for anything either. But it was important to have an unyielding character. No matter what, she had to fight it out for Gu Jingze's sake. She could not allow him to become a laughingstock. With these thoughts in mind, Lin Che hung up the phone. She wanted Gu Jingze to go to bed a little earlier. She did not want him to exert himself too much. She had just hung up when she heard a faint voice calling out to her. Lin Che. She turned her head and immediately saw Qin Qing standing in the corner. She said, "Ah, you." Qin Qing smiled. He was about to walk over to her but Dongzi immediately blocked him. Qin Qing froze. He vaguely saw a few people in Lin Che's surroundings following her. They did not wear Gu Jingze's blue symbol and he did not know who they were. Lin Che stood there and said softly, "Dongzi, it's all right. He's someone I know." Only then did Dongzi nod his head and step backward. He continued to gaze in Qin Qing's direction in a cautious posture. Qin Qing stared at Dongzi and looked at him skeptically for a long time. It was only after examining him for ages that his heart thumped. He thought to himself in surprise that these people were not Gu Jingze's, they were Lin Che's own men. Qin Qing looked at Lin Che. "Are these people your subordinates?" Lin Che gestured for Dongzi to withdraw. "Yes, they are mine." Qin Qing's eyes flashed as he looked at Lin Che. Sure enough, she was different now. She had already started to have her own power, her own personal army. Qin Qing had heard from Shui Mengqi about the Gu family's personal army. After being trained, these people seemed to be loyal only to their master. They would follow the first person they pledged allegiance to until they could no longer move. These people were what they called personal guards. People like these listened only to the instructions of their master and did not listen to anyone else's command. And even in the Gu family, not many had their own personal army. Shui Mengqi had one, which her father had specially trained for her. But he could not believe that Lin Che also had one now. Didn't that mean that Lin Che's status had long been different from in the past? Right now, she had finally and thoroughly made her way to one of the most central positions in the Gu family. She now had the special privileges enjoyed by the people at the spire of the Gu family pyramid. Qin Qing was dazed for a moment. Lin Che asked him, "Why are you here today?" In reality, of course, she knew why he was here. She was merely asking a question to which she knew the answer. She wanted to ask him why he wanted her to greet him while pretending not to know him, instead of telling others that they had already known each other in the past. Naturally, Qin Qing understood what she meant. He looked in front and said, "I know you must be thinking that I pretended not to know you because I don't want Mengqi to overthink. But that's not the reason. It's just that I've been working hard for the past few years and I want to forget who I was in the past. Right now, I just don't ever want to mention that useless me of the past. That useless him of the past." All right then. Now, he was indeed different from how he had been. Lin Che said, "If that's what you think, I'll definitely respect your wishes. Of course, Lin Che hoped that he would do well. After all, they had been friends for so many years before this. Although so many things had happened and the friendship they had had no longer existed, he was still Qin Qing. Qin Qing said, "But I still hope that you will live happily. I'm relieved to see that you're doing very well now." Lin Che was also very glad that he could achieve success. She looked at Qin Qing and said, "I hope that you can be happy too. But I didn't expect you to get together with Shui Mengqi. Have you been together for a long time?" Qin Qing nodded. "It's been half a year." Really? She felt that Shui Mengqi had returned to the Gu family with an objective, but she did not want Qin Qing to be implicated in her fulfillment of her objective and to become her tool. Qin Qing said, "Mengqi is a very good person. She taught me many things. Back then, I wasn't aware that she was part of the Gu family. But this world is really small." Indeed, there were few wealthy families, to begin with, so naturally, their world was small. Lin Che said, "Yes. What a coincidence." Just then, Mu Wanqing walked towards them in an extremely graceful manner. Sensing the situation, Qin Qing smiled at Lin Che and left. Qin Qing only turned to look at Lin Che after taking a few steps. He saw Mu Wanqing appearing to be very concerned about her. She was looking down at Lin Che's stomach and looked very worried. He could not believe that Lin Che really was pregnant. Pregnant with Gu Jingze's child. This was already Gu Jingze's second child. Logically speaking, Lin Che's current status was very stable. Qin Qing sighed internally to himself. He did not expect them to meet again in such a situation. Although he had said that he would be relieved to see her doing well, he nevertheless felt a little disheartened to see things going so well for her right now. Because the person who had given her such happiness was not him but Gu Jingze. Even though he respected Gu Jingze, he still felt very disappointed. But at the moment, he really did not know if his relationship with Shui Mengqi would really come to fruition in the future. If that happened, wouldn't they have to keep meeting like this? Yu Minmin was still criticizing him on their way back. Qin Qing made it sound so dignified. He just doesn't want too much trouble to affect his relationship with Shui Mengqi. Forget it. I'm just worried that Shui Mengqi is just using him. If he himself doesn't feel that way, then there's nothing we can do about it either. Yu Minmin said, "By the way, our company is going to hold an annual gathering in a few days. The company is going to travel quite far. Can you go?" "Where are we going?" Lin Che asked. Yu Minmin said, "We're definitely just going to the outskirts." "That's fine then. I can go." Lin Che continued, "Anyway, Gu Jingze isn't around now. I definitely must go to our company's annual gathering. I've never attended it for the past few years. It's been a bit unbecoming of me." "Alright then. Actually, I'm going too. I'll treat it as a chance to relax as well. My belly is so big, but I feel very gloomy staying at home." Yu Minmin genuinely felt stifled when she was stuck at home. Although no one dared to treat her poorly right now, she was already used to it at work and it was difficult for her to adapt to her new role all of a sudden. Chapter 1052, The Company's Annual Gathering. Lin Che put her arm around Yu Minmin. "In that case, let's choose a fun place for the annual gathering. We'll take the chance to forget our worries." In reality, it was very easy to get depressed during pregnancy. As their emotions were too volatile, they would frequently torture themselves. This was what they called antepartum depression. It had nothing to do with whether one's life was good or not. It was just the hormones making them feel too many emotions. It was actually good for them to go out and take a breather. In no time, Lin Che drew up the plan with the company and made preparations for the annual gathering. They were planning to have fun at a hot spring resort along the outskirts of the city for 2 days. As only people from the company were going, the venue for the event was not big. There were a total of more than 50 people in the company. Adding the trainees, there were only 70 plus people. All of the artists did not come along as they did not have time. They booked one of the halls in the resort to hold activities. They held a lottery event and watched the trainees report their progress and put on performances. Everyone also put together their own items to perform. They did other things like eat and drink, and freely enjoyed themselves. After the events had been properly arranged, everyone in the company was ready to set off. The people in the company set off together on a huge bus. Lin Che also boarded the bus midway through the journey. The The moment she got on the bus, the company's employees immediately got extremely excited. They looked at Lin Che and clapped in unison. They felt that Lin Che had really shown everyone respect by boarding the bus. On the bus, Lin Che said, "Everyone, you've worked hard this year. Due to health reasons, Madam President won't be coming up here to greet everyone. I'm here representing her." Immediately afterward, everyone started clapping and cheering. Of course, they were also aware of Yu Minmin's condition. She would have a hard time on the bus. If anything happened to her, it would turn into a national affair. Of course, they did not dare to let that happen. In reality, the company's employees were already very grateful to Lin Che and Yu Minmin. All else aside, even though the two of them were of very good status, they did not put on airs at all. They did not seem like some of those bosses who liked ordering their employees around. Working with such bosses was really like fighting their own people. The two of them had started from scratch and now had a certain status in the entertainment industry. These things made the two of them feel very proud of themselves. The group checked in after arriving at the hotel. Lin Che stayed in a room that was directly across Yu Minmin's room. That night, the first event the company held was its annual banquet. Lin Che and Yu Minmin sat together in the center. Although the acts performed by the company's employees were all very amateurish, they were also very interesting. On the other hand, the company's trainees were performing with all their might. They treasured every chance to perform in front of the bosses. They wanted Lin Che and Yu Minmin to see the results of their training at present and hoped that they would one day have a chance to debut. This was because their future prospects were basically guaranteed if they obtained recognition from Lin Che and Yu Minmin. None of the celebrities whom the studio had previously debuted was idling about. Although there were very few celebrities from Lin Che's studio, every one of them was very brilliant. This was also something that was enthusiastically discussed in the industry. That night, Lin Che even used her phone to send red packets to everyone. Everyone became even more delighted as the huge red packets were sent out one by one. Many people collapsed after drinking that night. Everyone returned to their rooms with much commotion and went to bed early. The next day, they were to go to the hot springs together and eat delicious food. Everyone was looking forward to it immensely. They prepared their swimsuits early in the morning and went to soak in the public hot spring. There was definitely no way Lin Che could soak in the hot spring given her body's condition. As the boss, she still had to encourage her employees. Thus, she nevertheless showed up there on that day. From a distance, she saw the employees inside enthusiastically playing in the water. The scene was extremely lively. She could not help her urge to smile when she saw them from afar. Someone said that Sister Che had arrived. Many people immediately looked at her, only to see Lin Che dressed in a one-piece swimsuit with a shawl draped over her body. Her slender and straight legs appeared very eye-catching. She was what they called someone whose legs were right below her neck. Her legs were truly very long and her proportions were genuinely terrific too. However, her belly was covered and no one could see anything at the moment. Everyone looked at her standing here and could not help but think to themselves that she was well deserving of the title of the queen of the industry. This figure, this goddess-like appearance, the moment she stood here, she simply looked like how the queen of the industry should look. It was no wonder she was famous. But in reality, many people already knew about Lin Che's pregnancy. However, as Lin Che had not announced it, as employees, they would discuss it amongst themselves in private but would never say it directly to her. Many people still did not know who exactly Lin Che's husband was. Since Lin Che had decided to marry in secret, they would not ask her about it either. At present, they looked at Lin Che and it occurred to them that it had been years since she had entered the industry. Her skin was still in such good condition and she did not even need powder to appear on screen. Her face was in such a condition and so was her body. It was fair and soft and simply looked pleasant to the touch. They instinctively wondered who exactly her husband was. He had such good luck to be able to marry such a beautiful Lin Che. Seeing that everyone had stopped what they were doing, Lin Che hastily said, "Go ahead and have fun. Don't hold yourselves back like this just because I'm here." Only then did they all remember. Everyone quickly enlivened the atmosphere once again. They thought to themselves that they had not felt restrained earlier, but had been stunned while looking at Lin Che. Lin Che smiled. She did not dare to get into the water. She found a spot and dipped her legs into the water, deciding just to soak them. Everyone knew that pregnant women could not soak in a hot spring like this. Naturally, they didn't dare to tell Lin Che to come over. But when they saw that Yu Minmin was here, all of them called out to Sister Yu one after another. Yu Minmin smiled and said, "Have fun, everyone. I won't join you guys this year. I'll play with all of you again next year once I've delivered the goods." Hearing this, one of the company's employees shouted from the back, "We know that the most important thing is for Sister Yu to give birth to our little president." Yu Minmin's face turned red. "Go and play on your own." Everyone broke out in laughter. Yu Minmin glared at her own employees and slowly walked to a spot beside Lin Che. She looked inside and said, "You can say that the company is complete right now. Seeing them like this, seriously, I think our many years of hard work didn't go to waste." Lin Che looked inside. She knew that it had indeed been very difficult for them to grow from a small studio to their current size. The fact that the company could be of its present scale was already something to be proud about. When she had first signed on to become a celebrity back then, who would have thought that they would one day have their own studio? Apart from being a celebrity, she herself could even help others achieve their dreams of becoming celebrities. She could even change other people's lives and had their fates in the palm of her hand. After roughing it out for so many years, they were finally at the top of the pyramid of the entertainment industry. Just then, she heard someone say from behind her, "Ma'am, you may have to come out for a moment." Yu Minmin thought that something had happened. She looked at the person in slight annoyance. Why? The person was so nervous that he seemed to be slightly at a loss as to what to do. He pointed outside with one finger and said, outside, Mr. President is here." What? Even Yu Minmin was stunned. He had not told her beforehand. Why was he here? However, immediately afterward, the employees, who had already heard the sounds, started screaming. Chapter 1053. She was truly of high status. They could not believe that Mr. President had actually come. They thought of the fact that they had never seen Mr. President their entire lives. Although they all knew what he looked like, they had only ever seen his affable disposition on television. They had not seen Mr. President in real life. While their boss was the First Lady, Mr. President had never come to the company. They had also never thought that Gu Jingming would go to the company one day. After all, Mr. President was not an ordinary person. Of course, he could not enact some scene where he went to the company to pick his wife up. Whenever the president went out, there was always much cause for delay. There was always a crowd of people following him and security had to be arranged in advance. It was impossible that he would go to the company for no reason. Thus, everyone was very excited since Mr. President had come to their annual gathering this time. Lin Che looked up at Yu Minmin and beamed. Good gracious, he chased you all the way here. Yu Minmin's face turned even redder, but she could not help the hint of radiance on her face either. She mumbled, he didn't rush here because something happened, right? Lin Che said, if something cropped up, he would have told you to return a long time ago. There's no way he would suddenly rush here. Quick, go on. What if he comes over here in a while? No one is properly dressed. How can they meet Mr. President? Hearing Lin Che say this, it occurred to the employees that they were going to meet Mr. President. Shouldn't they quickly go and get dressed? Everyone rushed off like a swarm of bees. With support from the people around her, Lin Che also stood up and went back to get her clothes. Meanwhile, Gu Jingming had already arrived. Yu Minmin went out to welcome him and saw that he had brought very few people with him. She quickly walked towards him and asked, why are you here? Gu Jingming reached her within a few steps. He looked down and glanced at her belly before winding his arm around hers and saying, my wife's company is having an annual gathering. As a husband, shouldn't I come over and take a look? Yu Minmin looked up. Really? Gu Jingming looked at her sparkling eyes. Furthermore, I was worried that you were going to stay here alone. He looked down and embraced her, his sparkling eyes looking deeply into hers. Yu Minmin's expression softened. She had never thought that there would ever be a man in this world who would treat her this way. In reality, putting aside her antepartum depression, everything else was going very well for her. Her husband was not like other husbands who ignored their wives during their pregnancy and no longer had tender sentiments towards their wives when they saw their bodies balloon. Instead, he treated her more and more tenderly. Every day, he would sleep on the same bed as her and hug her. No matter how heavy her body was, he would always let her fall asleep using his arm as her pillow. No one could have imagined that Gu Jingming was such a person in private. Perhaps he was domineering, but he was very thoughtful of her and was very sincere towards her too. Deep in her heart, Yu Minmin still felt very blessed. She had never known that she could be so precious to a man. Perhaps she had suffered so much in the past so that she could meet him one day. Then, all the pain she had been through was compensated for at that moment. Gu Jingming was still looking down while treating her with tender affection. But just then, he saw the employees come out from behind her to greet him after quickly dressing up properly. Everyone's faces were filled with envy when they saw the two of them locked in an embrace. My goodness, even though I always see the president and his wife making public displays of affection on television, it does indeed feel different when they do it right in front of us. How is this a display? A display is a pretense. Look at how gentle Mr. President is. It's definitely not an act. Just then, Gu Jingming saw someone pat Yu Minmin from behind. The moment Yu Minmin turned around to see everyone looking at them from afar, her face turned red immediately and she quickly released Gu Jingming from her hold. Many of these employees who had been with her for many years had only seen her carry out her tasks with a strict, no-nonsense approach. Of course, they had never seen a scene like this. Now that everyone had happened to see this, of course, Yu Minmin felt even more embarrassed. There was a sense that another aspect of her privacy had been exposed. On the other hand, Gu Jingming took it completely in stride. While rubbing her back, he looked at everyone and smiled at them. He seemed just as amiable as he did on television, but at the same time he had a different air than he did on television. It was only when they actually saw Gu Jingming in person that everyone felt, Gu Jingming's manner was truly more imposing in real life than on television. It was probably because the television screen was too small and could not display the tall and domineering president in all his glory. His aura was cold, to begin with. Just looking at his figure alone, it had an air of superiority to it. The imposing manner of a king displayed vividly by him, but he did not have the arrogance of a king. Instead, he had an affable aura that showed on his face. Although there weren't many people following him right now, this could not dampen his tremendous grandeur at all. It was everyone's first time seeing Gu Jingming in person. For a moment, they were truly stunned by his aura. As expected of the president. Mr. President really makes people feel stifled. Good Lord, I actually saw Mr. President in the flesh. Everyone was chattering amongst themselves softly. However, they did not dare to speak once Gu Jingming actually came near. Gu Jingming greeted everyone and said, "Hello everyone. All of you have worked hard for the past year. I just came to join in the fun. You can ignore me." Just then, Lin Che approached them from behind. When Gu Jingming saw Lin Che, he smiled and said, "Oh, Lin Che is here too." Lin Che quickly walked towards him and said, "Hello, Mr. President. Everyone is truly overwhelmed by your favor in coming to attend the company's annual gathering. I just came to take a casual look. All of you shouldn't hold yourselves back." Lin Che smiled widely. She felt many eyes still fixed on them from behind. She herself stood aside for a moment and also obediently kept quiet. After all, she was not particularly familiar with the president and he was such a serious person at that. He was not like other relatives and friends of Gu Jingze with whom she could casually joke around. But the other employees of the company were already very shocked when they saw Lin Che casually walk over and greet Gu Jingming. Their impression of Lin Che was constantly changing too. Earlier, when Lin Che had made her appearance, they felt that her personality was so pleasant and she was neither servile nor overbearing regardless of who she met. She never had any intention of currying favor with people. Furthermore, she would absolutely not make herself appear lowly and naturally did not look down on anyone else either. But as she stood beside the president right now, she nevertheless felt no fear at all. She still spoke to the president in such a casual manner and the way she behaved really made them admire her. Sister Che is really amazing. She's not at all afraid in front of Mr. President. What's more, she doesn't appear inferior at all. I wouldn't dare even if I was beaten to death. But Mr. President also treats Sister Che so casually. He even knows Sister Che. Sister Che is really terrific. Everyone knows her. Lin Che found it strange when she noticed that everyone was looking at her differently. She asked, "What's the matter? Why is everyone looking at me like this?" Yu Minmin broke into a smile. "Fool, everyone is very surprised that you're even close to the president." They had known each other since long ago. Of course, they were close. Yu Minmin said, "After all of them don't know that with your status, you've been at the top and looking down on everything since a long time ago." Chapter 1054. Did Lin Che still have lingering feelings for Qin Qing? Why does it sound as if you're making fun of me? It's true, it's true. In the future, all of us people from the Gu family will have to listen to you as the matriarch. Of course, Yu Minmin was joking. Lin Che moved closer to her and shoved her slightly. "How mean. I'll give the position to you." Yu Minmin said with an exaggerated expression, "Such a high position. I'm definitely not worthy of it." Lin Che looked at her and sighed. "You definitely would be criticized to death for your exaggerated acting." Yu Minmin said, "That's why I never thought of wanting to be an actress, either." Lin Che looked over at them. Indeed, the way everyone was looking at her was strange and it made her feel very helpless. Gu Jingming headed in first with his subordinates. Lin Che had already instructed people to prepare a place for Gu Jingming to rest. If Yu Minmin had come alone, she would stay in the same type of suite as Lin Che. But now that Mr. President was here, of course, the two of them should be upgraded to a better room. Thus, she spoke to the resort about this. Upon hearing that Mr. President had suddenly arrived, the resort staff immediately prepared the special suite that the resort did not usually allow people to use and allowed the president to check in. If Lin Che had not made it known to them in advance that the president was on a low-profile trip, the resort might just have arranged a welcome banquet. Gu Jingming headed to the room with his arm around Yu Minmin. Lin Che followed them and said, "Well then, Mr. President. I won't disturb your rest." Gu Jingze smiled and looked at Lin Che. "Your body isn't in good condition, either. Since Gu Jingze isn't around right now, you must be cautious about everything." Lin Che looked at Gu Jingming gratefully. "Older brother, thank you for your constant concern." That day, he had even specially told Yu Minmin to return to the old residence with her, just so she would not feel too awkward while she was there and would have someone to accompany her. There was a tacit mutual understanding between the two of them. Gu Jingming smiled. Between themselves, there was no need to say too much. Gu Jingming put his arm around Minmin. "All right, go in first. You must be feeling tired after today." Yu Minmin sensed him moving closer. She looked up to see that Lin Che was still watching them. She could not help but feel a little embarrassed and bashfully shoved his chest. Gu Jingming looked up and glanced at Lin Che before asking, "What is there to blush about in front of Lin Che?" Yu Minmin immediately glared at him. She also made a face at Lin Che before hastily closing the door. Outside, Lin Che could not help but smile. She was also thinking to herself that unexpectedly, the usually serious Gu Jingming treated Yu Minmin with such tender affection and was so attached to her. However, she thought more and more of Gu Jingze when she saw other couples going around together. He had already been gone for many days. She usually did not sense it when she was alone. However, she faintly felt a little disheartened at the moment. After returning to her room, her face was expressionless too. She leaned against the door and looked around. She rubbed her belly and said to the child in her womb, "Your father is working and doing his best for us. We must support him." However, some unhappiness was still showing on her face. She was leaning against the door and thinking when she heard her phone ring. Qin Qing was calling. She answered the call. "Qin Qing." "Yes, it's me. You still have my number saved?" At the other end of the line, Qin Qing was faintly surprised. Lin Che said, "Yes. I never changed my number all this time. I didn't delete any of the numbers I had either." Lin Che was merely confused as to why he had suddenly called her. Qin Qing asked, "Really? I was just giving it a shot. I didn't expect that you would actually pick up. But the fact that you still have my number saved makes me very happy. I mean it." After meeting Lin Che in the Gu residence, Qin Qing genuinely had not expected that Lin Che could still trigger his emotions. But he simply could not ignore the way he felt, especially when she had not changed at all. After the past few years, he even felt that he no longer knew himself. But still, Lin Che's face was as soft and beautiful as that of a high school student. Even though her atmosphere had also become much stronger because of her increased self-confidence, she was still the Lin Che in his memory. Qin Qing felt that it was perhaps for this reason that he felt this way. Thus, the sudden surge of emotion in his heart gave him the impulse to make this call. Who knew that it would go through? At the moment, he did not even understand how he felt. There was excitement, awe, delight, and also sadness. But he was still very happy. Lin Che said, "All right. Why would I delete your number for no reason?" As Lin Che was in low spirits, the languidness of her tone was immediately evident. Qin Qing knew her so well. How could he possibly not sense her poor mood? "Why, do you feel terrible after hearing my voice? If so, I can hang up first." "Of course not." Lin Che smiled. "It's not because of you. I'm in pretty low spirits today. Maybe it's because of my body," Lin Che said truthfully. Qin Qing asked, "Because of your body? Because you're pregnant?" "Maybe. I was initially all right today. It's our company's annual gathering, so we came out to have fun. But I'm probably a little tired now." "Was Gu Jingze not worried about you going for the annual gathering alone?" At a time like this, Qin Qing said. Lin Che said, "Haha. Gu Jingze is away on a business trip. He's not at home. I'm completely alone right now." Qin Qing recalled that Shui Mengqi had said so before too. Gu Jingze had gone abroad and would not be back for many days. Qin Qing pondered for a bit and asked, "Don't you still have the child in your belly?" You're right. I was just kidding, but you took it seriously." "All right, if there's nothing else, I'll go to bed first," Lin Che said. Qin Qing paused. He greeted her good night and hung up the phone. Lin Che put down the phone and went into rest. Meanwhile, Qin Qing could not calm down for a long time. He continued to think of Lin Che and her voice earlier. She would only sound like this when she was unhappy. Even after all these years, Lin Che's personality had not changed fundamentally. Her emotions were written all over her face. Qin Qing thought for some time before suddenly standing up and walking out. When the butler saw Qin Qing go out, he quickly asked, "Young master, where are you going so late at night?" Qin Qing said, "Help me investigate the location that Lin Che's studio chose for their annual gathering this year." Oh, sure. Naturally, the butler did not know what he was going to do. But since it was a command from young master, he nevertheless quickly followed it. Qin Qing walked out in quick strides but did not notice his mother pouring water behind him. When she suddenly heard him say this, her heart immediately thumped. Lin Che. Why was Qin Qing still involved with that Lin Che? Ever since Lin Che had returned, they had had their eye on her. But since Qin Qing had never brought it up, they thought that their relationship was a thing of the past. Why had he suddenly mentioned her now? Could it be that Lin Che still had lingering feelings for Qin Qing? Chapter 1055. The gifts sent here were such a surprise. In the room, Lin Che wanted to call Gu Jingze but put down her phone after pondering. She leaned backward and read her script for a while. Outside, Dongzi suddenly said, "Madam, someone outside brought something here." Lin Che asked, "What did he bring?" "The people outside just said that someone brought it here. They didn't say who it was." Dongzi continued, "It's still outside. I didn't ask them to bring it in." Lin Che was a little suspicious. She walked out and said, "I'll go and take a look." She put on a coat and walked out, accompanied by Dongzi. Outside, at the doorway, someone was standing there carrying a huge box. The moment Lin Che saw him, she realized that the person was none other than Qin Qing. Qin Qing turned his head around slowly. When his eyes met Lin Che's eyes, he smiled slightly. "I knew you were here," he presented the box to her. "I came to bring you some food." Lin Che only regained her senses after a long time and looked at Qin Qing. "Did you especially come here to bring me something?" Qin Qing said, "Yes. Come and see what it is." Lin Che shook her head. She seriously wondered what Qin Qing was doing so late at night. She walked over to him and took a look. He opened the box, which was filled with her favorite foods, spicy duck necks, duck wings, and duck intestines. Lin Che said in delight, wow. Duck necks. Qin Qing beamed at her. So, do you still like eating these? I remember that these used to be your favorite. Lin Che shook her head vigorously. Of course, I like eating these. In the past, she would even drag Qin Qing along to buy and eat these on the way home. When she recalled those memories, those were the best days of her life in the past. Although it was tough, small pleasures could make her happy. Qin Qing said, take these in and eat them. Lin Che received the box from him gratefully. Beside her, Dongzi quickly took it from her. Indeed, because of this little incident, Lin Che's mood improved greatly all of a sudden. She looked at Qin Qing and felt that it was not polite not to invite him in since he had specially brought something here. Thus, she said to him, come in and take a seat. Qin Qing smiled and nodded. He felt very happy as he gazed at her cheerful face. He felt as if they had returned to the past. Although she was now the Gu family's madam, she was ultimately still Lin Che. They did not go into her room. Lin Che found a place outside and invited him to sit down and rest for a bit. She had people bring them some drinks. She looked at the duck necks. It was true that she had not eaten them for a long time. Now that she was looking at it, she had worked up an appetite and wanted to have a bite. The hungry worm in her stomach had awoken. She felt that she was about to drool after seeing it. To begin with, she was prone to food cravings during pregnancy. If she could not eat what she wanted to, she would feel terrible. Now that she had seen this food, of course, she could no longer control herself. She started eating mouthful after mouthful. While eating, she exclaimed, ah, it's still the same taste. Is it from the stall at the school entrance? Qin Qing smiled and said, yes. Slow down a little, that stall is still open. Even though the boss passed away, his daughter took over the stall and is still operating it. Really, you even especially went there to buy it. Thank you, Lin Che said. Qin Qing looked at her. Do you feel better now? Lin Che froze and looked at him. How did you know that I wasn't in a good mood? Qin Qing drank a mouthful of something and said coolly, of course. If I can't even tell that you're in a bad mood, can I say I ever knew you? We've known each other for so many years. When you're in a bad mood, your voice will be completely dejected. Of course, I could tell. Lin Che was genuinely touched. He was so sensitive, he even remembered this. Lin Che thought that since he had a girlfriend who he liked now, and so many years had passed since what had happened between them, he had probably returned to being the Qin Qing she knew in the past and was no longer letting his imagination run wild. Lin Che said, anyway, thank you. The two of them were chatting happily here but were unaware of a figure appearing behind them and passing by in a flash. Lin Che looked up and sensed that something was amiss. She glanced at the side. Dongzi realized something was wrong and asked Lin Che, Madam, is something wrong? Lin Che merely felt that someone seemed to be nearby, but she was not sure either. Perhaps she had been too paranoid recently. Just as before, when she had gone to the old Gu residence, she had even specifically instructed everyone to be prepared just in case. She was probably too cautious. She was so prone to treating everyone as an enemy because Gu Jingze was not around. While thinking to herself, she smiled and shook her head. It's all right, just tell them to be more alert to our surroundings. While chewing on the duck neck, she instructed them calmly. Then, Qin Qing saw the personal guards beside her stealthily leave to patrol the place. He gazed deeply at Lin Che and felt that she was slightly different, but perhaps her nature remained the same. That was probably why he still felt a sense of familiarity as he looked at her. Lin Che ate for some time but did not expect to feel the urge to vomit again. Although she felt that her pregnancy symptoms were not so serious anymore, she would still feel like vomiting if she ate food that was too greasy. She quickly ran out with her hand over her mouth. There was no time for her to say anything before she rushed into the washroom. Qin Qing looked at her worriedly. He thought that it was inappropriate for him to go in with her when he saw many people following her. What's more, she had gone into the washroom. Besides, the moment he turned around, he saw with astonishment someone suddenly standing in front of him. Qin Qing was stunned. His entire body jolted at the cold gaze on him. Lin Che vomited inside for a long time. She took out her handkerchief and wiped her mouth. She felt terrible after vomiting. She sighed and felt that she was really going to die. Even eating a bit of duck neck made her puke. When she went out, she felt someone hold her up. She said coolly, "I won't be able to enjoy the food, Chin Ching. Go ahead and eat on your own. I'm old, I can't handle it anymore. I want to puke." However, that arm and that familiar faint scent that drifted towards her immediately made her perk up. She looked up instinctively in disbelief. The man before her was dressed completely in black. Under the cover of night, he looked like the Dark Knight. He stood there with his body straightened and looked at Lin Che. His pitch-black eyes had a hint of emotion so complex that one could not ascertain it. It flowed from his eyes like thick black ink spreading, so dense that it made one gasp. She was so shocked that she nearly shouted. Gu Jingze. She looked at the man in front of her in delight. She had already started smiling unknowingly. She immediately hugged him. Gu Jingze's body was still chilly. As he had just been blown by the night breeze, the scent of the wind lingered on his body. After being hugged in this manner, the dark expression on Gu Jingze's face began to lighten up. He looked down at Lin Che, frowned, and asked, "What are you doing?" Only then did Lin Che remember Chin Ching. She looked up and searched for him. But she did not see any trace of Chin Ching within her field of vision. Gu Jingze scoffed. His voice was filled with dissatisfaction and jealousy. It was extremely obvious. "What are you looking for? He left a long time ago." What? He had left? Chapter 1056. How dare you hit on my woman? All right then. Lin Che only wondered if Gu Jingze chased him off. However, she looked at Gu Jingze and suddenly did not want to think about all these for now. She looked up in surprise at Gu Jingze, who was covered in dust. "How come you're back?" Gu Jingze's eyes swept across her plainly. "Why, can't I come back?" He sounded angry. Was it because of Chin Ching? She hugged Gu Jingze's waist. "No, of course not. I'm just surprised since you said that you wouldn't be back for a few days." Gu Jingze indeed wanted to surprise her. However, little did he expect to come back and see another man waiting for his wife. At that time, Gu Jingze only had a sudden urge to kill that man. It had been years since he had such a murderous urge, but he really wanted to kill him at that moment. He suppressed that thought with all his strength and only told Chin Ching to get lost. Although Chin Ching looked back at him, he simply left without a word. Otherwise, if he did say anything, Gu Jingze might have immediately caved in and made him disappear for good. Gu Jingze kept his lips shut tightly, looking extremely adamant. Lin Che immediately knew for sure that he was indeed angry. She hugged his waist tighter and threw her arms around his neck, cheekily clinging to his body. "Gu Jingze, don't tell me you're still angry over him. He only came to give me some food. He has a girlfriend now and we have not met in years. There's nothing between us since long ago. Giving her gifts this late at night and personally making a trip down here." Yes, Lin Che couldn't possibly have any feelings for him anymore, but who knew if it was the same for Chin Ching? Lin Che added, "Furthermore, I'm pregnant. What do you think I can possibly do now? I'm ugly, fat, and my face is so oily. I don't have an ounce of makeup on and I am so unclean. Don't tell me that I can still play around with guys." Ha, she made it sound so logical. Ugly, fat, unkempt. He did not think that it was a big deal if she did get a little uglier and less glamorous. However, she had always been perfect. In fact, she seemed to look better as she aged. Even though she was pregnant now, how did she look any bit ugly? She was not ugly at all. She looked like a student more than a mother. Her skin was still fair and porcelain. Her fingers were still as slender as willow branches. Her eyes were still so bright and pure. Her figure was still slender and beautiful. Gu Jingze looked down at this inviting face and thought of Chin Ching again. He was beginning to regret letting him off. He should have just killed him with no hesitation right then. Whoever saw this pretty face and gracefully aging appearance would have been tempted. Seeing as Gu Jingze's expression was turning ugly and his body stiffening up, Lin Che started to worry. She clung to his neck and planted a kiss on his lips. Gu Jingze did not move at first. There was no way this old trick was going to work on him. However, Lin Che's lips lingered on his and were as soft as a feather. After the pair went in, they could not resist being all over each other. Meanwhile, on the outside, someone already discovered that there was a visitor. They quickly ran out in surprise and said to another person, "I think I just saw a man visiting Sister Che." "A man? What kind?" "A super handsome man, but I only saw his side profile. I didn't get a clear look." "What? How handsome is he?" "Well, he looked like Gu Jingze." "That handsome?" "Of course." "Is that Sister Che's man?" "Definitely." They hugged and went inside. It was really intimate. "Oh my, I wish I could see how he looked like." They already went in. Furthermore, it's Sister Che's privacy. If she doesn't want to talk about it, we shouldn't pry. Sigh, but I'm really curious. Who is the lucky guy who married Sister Che? From what I saw, he looked very compatible with Sister Che. No wonder she could take a liking to him. He doesn't look like an ordinary person. So handsome. He has a great figure too. It wasn't long before everyone knew about it. Word spread about seeing Sister Che's man. Since Lin Che was pregnant, that man must have been the baby's father. They only did not know how long Lin Che was planning to hide. They naturally would not talk about it either. However, they were still really curious about what kind of man her child's father was. Inside, Lin Che won Gu Jingze over in no time. He knew that he wouldn't be able to do anything to her. But there was still an old flame that had not been put out in his heart. He secretly wondered if Qin Qing's purpose of finding Lin Che was to rekindle their relationship. Was Shui Mengqi plotting something? Or it was manageable if it was either of the two. If it was neither. Haha, he was really asking for a death wish. Meanwhile, in another room, Yu Minmin and Gu Jingming were resting together. Gu Jingze looked out the window and saw some movements. He narrowed his eyes and smiled. Seeing that Yu Minmin looked at him curiously, he said, "Jingze is here." Yu Minmin quickly looked out. "What, really? How did you know?" "I saw Jingze's men outside." "It's fine, you should rest. He's here to look for Lin Che anyway. When Lin Che is around, we don't need to go out and greet him." Yu Minmin agreed with his thoughts. She lied down in a comfortable position. Looking at this place, it was really considered lousy in comparison to Glazed Tile Palace and the many places he had lived in. Chapter 1057. It was really like a blockbuster scene. Because the holiday resort they chose was a fun one and not a top-grade luxury resort, the place on this side of B City was not extravagant. It was a small town just beside B City. Visitors would come on the weekends, thus creating a demand for holiday resorts. However, the environment was not as clean and tidy as hotel rooms in the big city. To think that Gu Jingming had to stay here. It must have been compromising for him. She looked up and said, "This place is a little lackluster." "Yeah, why?" He looked down plainly at her as his fingers caressed her hair. Yu Minmin said, "It's nothing. I'm just worried you won't be able to sleep well because you're not used to it." "Why not? As long as you're here, I'll be able to sleep." He lowered his head and gently kissed her forehead. Yu Minmin rested her head against his neck, making his entire body crave for her. She said, "The one and only Mr. President, here in this holiday resort. It must be hard for you." Gu Jingming continued fiddling with her hair. "I'm not Mr. President today. I'm here as Yu Minmin's husband." Yu Minmin heard this and couldn't help but smile. Yu Minmin listened and it seemed to be already silent outside. It looked like Gu Jingze and Lin Che were already in their room. Yu Minmin looked up. Gu Jingze seems very busy recently. Gu Jingming nodded. "Yes." "What is he busy with?" "Shui Mengqi is back this time and he didn't even accompany Lin Che back to the Gu household." Gu Jingming explained, "The Shui family's forces abroad are kicking up a fuss. The family has been abroad for a long time and has accumulated power in that period. Shui Mengqi is back while they are still at it overseas. Jingze took this opportunity to head out and handle some matters outside the country on top of the Shui families. He also wants to finish it once and for all so that he can then keep Lin Che company." "I see, so tell me, is the Shui family truly powerful now? Are they going to fight for the matriarch spot and threaten Lin Che?" Gu Jingming said, "It's hard to say if they can or not now. But I can imagine that they definitely won't let it go without putting up a fight. This is the Shui family's one and only chance to get close to the heart of the Gu family. They are definitely going to try their best. Okay, I'm also very worried that something might happen to Lin Che. Sigh, especially now that she's pregnant, I'm afraid they might use that against her. Gu Jingming said, don't worry. Jing's won't let anything happen to Lin Che. Okay, Yu Minmin laid there and closed her eyes, enjoying the peace and quiet at that moment. Unexpectedly at this moment, someone suddenly knocked on their door. Gu Jingming frowned. He thought for a while and decided to get up. Everyone knew that he brought very little people with him here just so that he could get some undisturbed rest. However, if they still dared to come over, it must have been something serious. Gu Jingming opened the door and saw that Linda herself was here. What's up? Gu Jingming asked. Linda did not look good. She looked at Gu Jingming and said, Sir, someone just posted something on the internet. Take a look. What thing? Gu Jingming looked down and saw a post on the internet. It said that Gu Jingming had a political marriage with Yu Minmin. She was sold to be in Gu Jingming's bed at that time, and in order to keep his political image, he pretended to marry Yu Minmin. There were many photos of them at the beginning. The clear photographs showed that Yu Minmin was drunk beyond consciousness and was brought into Gu Jingming's room. She was later sent out in the middle of the night. Gu Jingming's eyes moved and his face instantly sank. Linda looked at him. Sir. Get the others here immediately, Gu Jingming instructed. Seal this information and protect Madam. Get someone to investigate and look into who posted this. Put Glazed Tile Palace on full alert and the presidential guards on first alert. His meeting with Yu Minmin happened so many years ago. Why would these people suddenly bring it up? What was their motive? For them to suddenly do this when Yu Minmin was pregnant now, who exactly were they targeting? Gu Jingming had no choice but to be on full alert to tackle anything at any time. The people who came for the annual meeting were prepared to leave the holiday resort the next day. They were sound asleep when they suddenly heard the commotion outside. They looked down from their windows and felt that something was not right. The outside was suddenly on lockdown. The presidential guards, national security, people in all kinds of uniforms, and even armed forces with heavy weapons appeared down below. It was like a scene out of a blockbuster film, where they teleport through their sleep. But then, they also recalled that Mr. President was here too. Mr. President was here. In that case, this was logical. It was just that it was their first time seeing such a scene. Thus, they were really stunned. Gu Jingming headed straight for Gu Jingze's room and knocked on the door. Lin Che saw that it was Gu Jingming. He looked extremely stern. She quickly left to let the two men talk. Outside, she saw that Yu Minmin was also rather puzzled, as if she had no idea what was the emergency. Lin Che helped Yu Minmin. There seemed to be many people outside. Yu Minmin said, I probably have to head back soon. They're here to pick me up. Lin Che was surprised. So many people escorting you. Did something happen? I don't know either. Yu Minmin was also worried. At this moment, Gu Jingming was already back outside. He looked at the two of them and said to Yu Minmin, I'll get my men to send you home first. Gu Jingze followed behind and said to Lin Che, you will head home too. Lin Che quickly went to Gu Jingze's side. What happened? We'll talk when we get home, Gu Jingze replied. Lin Che nodded and waved to Yu Minmin. They looked at each other and decided to continue their chat over the phone when they were both at home. People in the company naturally did not know what happened, but they saw their bosses leave just like that. Gu Jingming let Yu Minmin leave under protection while he stayed behind to discuss the matter with Linda. Thus, the area was still protected. This made the company staff more curious as they continued watching from their rooms. They felt as if they were experiencing a political matter, so up close for the first time. Yu Minmin was escorted to the car. She turned to look in Gu Jingming's direction and was worried. She was filled with insecurity and couldn't really leave in peace. The staff next to her said, Madam, Sir would like you to leave as quickly as possible. He will come back home soon. Don't worry too much. Yu Minmin nodded and got into the car. However, the staff looked at each other and drove off. But shortly after, Yu Minmin rested there and felt drowsy. She immediately sensed that something was not right. She was clearly not that tired. Furthermore, when met with a situation like this, she would never be this sleepy. Chapter 1058. Gu Jingming's biggest crisis. She was much more awake now. She lifted her head and looked outside. Where was this place? The car headed in a direction she wasn't familiar with. In an instant, Yu Minmin sensed that she was not returning home. Instead, she was getting further away. You guys, what is going on? Who are you? Where are you taking me? The two looked back at her. To Yu Minmin's horror, their expressions no longer held the same respect as they did for her just now. Instead, they had a vicious expression and did not look like good guys. One of them looked at Yu Minmin and smirked coldly. Then, he covered her mouth with one hand. Yu Minmin screamed in surprise and felt herself inhaling something peculiar. Then, she lost consciousness and went limp. The two of them saw that Yu Minmin fainted. They picked up the phone. We got her and we're heading out towards M Nation now. Yes. We'll drive the small roads. We won't be discovered. Yes. The cold voice on the other end of the line said, good. Stick to the plan. The voice was so cold that it was seemingly filled with despair. On the other side of the phone, that person's expression grew into a smile. It was none other than Yun Kuoshan. Yun Kuoshan's face was filled with viciousness. He thought to himself coldly, you chased me out of C Nation. I will make a comeback by hook or by crook. You made my family suffer, so I'll absolutely not let yours live in peace. Did you think my family only knows of that one secret about Black Eagle? No, we have prepared for this for years. Our trump card is not as simple as you think. Lin Che and Gu Jingze returned home together. Gu Jingze let his people make preparations. At the same time, he said to Lin Che, you should take a good rest over the next few days. Don't trouble yourself with matters outside. Lin Che asked, what exactly is going on? Tell me. Gu Jingze took a deep breath and said, the conspirators who took pictures of Yu Minmin and Big Brother that time have resurfaced again. What? Lin Che asked, wasn't it already settled? No, Gu Jingze said. Back then, they disappeared after sending some photos out. Later, Big Brother married Yu Minmin and we covered up the matter. We thought that would be the end of it, but we did not expect them to resurface after so many years. I'm afraid they didn't think the time was up, so they did not continue. Now, they have found the right time and they're prepared to strike again. The right time? What right time? Lin Che asked anxiously. At that moment, someone from the outside came in a hurry. Sir. Gu Jingze opened the door. Qin Hao was outside with a solemn look on his face. Sir, word about the old man's health got out. This was the right time. Lin Che paused for a second and then came to her senses. Gu Jingze also took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He instructed calmly, we'll start retaliating. Gu Jingze said to Lin Che, I thought this day would come, so I made some preparations in advance. Don't worry. Lin Che nodded. Okay, go be busy if you have to. I'll stay at home obediently. I won't leave the house. Yeah, it won't take more than a few days. He hugged Lin Che and pecked her lips. Lin Che smiled and leaned into his arms quietly. Gu Jingze sighed and then left. Lin Che thought that Yu Minmin should have been home by now. She wanted to call her, but the phone was turned off. She was a little puzzled, but did not think too much into it. She sat down and gave instructions to her company staff so that they would not be affected by this. But how could they not be affected at all? Bai told her that the staff was all wondering what happened. There were so many outsiders who came and it was such a big commotion. Nothing could hide it. They could only mobilize everyone and keep them from panicking. It was just some normal presidential matter and not a big deal. Anything huge in the nation was exaggerated anyway, so they did not have to worry and overthink things. Meanwhile, Gu Jingming returned to Glazed Tile Palace but could not see Yu Minmin around. Where is Madam? Gu Jingming asked. Sir, Madam is not with you, the attendant asked. Gu Jingming froze. He immediately had a bad feeling. He paused and then immediately turned around to head back out. As he walked, he said, Linda, something has happened to Madam. Find her immediately. Find out what is going on. Linda looked at Gu Jingming's fiery eyes. They seemed to be on the verge of collapse. They were cold like when Shira just stepped out of hell. His tall stature exuded coldness. Linda quickly went out. Yu Minmin was missing. Oh no, she was pregnant too. How could she have gone missing? How could she? Within a few hours, Yu Minmin was already at the border of M Nation. She traveled by car and was then transported in a military plane. She had no idea how she got to M Nation. Yu Minmin woke up groggily and felt as if she was in hell. She was so tired and hungry. She held her belly worriedly. Thankfully, the baby in her belly was still moving non-stop. She could feel that he was not comfortable. The movements were stronger than normal. She mumbled to herself quietly, hoping that her child would be able to hear her thoughts. Baby, baby, don't be afraid. Mommy will protect you. I definitely will. For the sake of her child, she would not die here. She absolutely would not. It was not easy for her to conceive this child. It was not easy for her to decide to bear a child for Gu Jingming. Meanwhile, Lin Che was at home, waiting for updates. Gu Jingze did not return. Lin Che looked up the internet for news and found news on Grandpa Gu's long-term illness. He had not made an appearance for very long and outsiders wondered if he had passed away. At the same time, news of Gu Jingming and Yu Minmin's political wedding was also already spreading. People immediately responded and said that the Gu family had to address these things. How the Gu family won over many things were written out. It vaguely hinted that the Gu family deceived the public. By letting Gu Jingming hold the reign in politics, Gu Jingze could do whatever he wanted. Who knew how many years of corrupted money they took to develop the Gu family to this day? Consequently, a wave of investigations into Gu Jingming was conducted and publicized on the internet. This ever-popular Mr. President was now faced with his greatest crisis. Lin Che was even more unsettled. It was not as simple as she had thought. This looked like it could blow up. She looked at the pictures of Yu Minmin and Gu Jingming and then at the comments hurling insults at both of them. Lin Che thought that their deductions were actually not wrong. At that time, Gu Jingming and Yu Minmin indeed had a political marriage. Looking at those pictures, nobody could imagine that Gu Jingming would also have a gentle side to him, and he was only gentle towards Yu Minmin. Chapter 1059, She was taken to M Nation. However, people only believed what they saw. They would never see what was beyond the surface. Nobody could see how Gu Jingming was like in real life. Neither did they know how he was like outside of what they saw on TV and newspapers. At the same time, stock prices plunged for some listed companies under the Gu family. This was inevitable. Some projects were also forced to shut down and everyone started to feel anxious. Gu Jingze was definitely busy, so Lin Che did not leave the house. She rested and waited for updates at home. She would let Dong Zi find out information to see what exactly was going on now. There was still no response from Glazed Tile Palace. Mr. President had shut himself in and nobody knew what he was doing. The world outside was chaotic. There were people already out in the streets demanding the president to resign. Gu Jingze stood in his office as he listened to his subordinate report the data. President Gu, Mr. President has shut himself in and we don't know what to do. Gu Jingze asked, Madam President is still nowhere to be found. We searched within the nation, but we still can't find her. We considered the possibility that she had been transported out of C Nation. Mr. President is anxiously looking for Madam President. He's not caring about anything else. You see. Yu Minmin was missing and she was carrying his child. How could Gu Jingming still be able to care about anything else? Gu Jingze asked, let him be. What do we do now? We still have to find the source and whoever is behind all this nonsense. Once we find them, we'll be able to accomplish the rest. They got the message and the three of them retreated to carry out their own duties. Gu Jingze waved his hand and dismissed the rest. Just then, Lin Che called him. He let out a breath to calm down and then picked up the phone. Gu Jingze, are you still busy? Lin Che's bright voice came through the phone. Gu Jingze replied, I'm all right. How are you at home? What could happen to me at home? I'm fine. Okay, don't leave the house. I'll be back in a few days. I know, I'm not going anywhere. You should be careful too. I will. Gu Jingze hung up and pondered for a while. He picked up his phone again and said to Qin Hao, "Don't tell Lin Che that Yu Minmin is missing." "Yes, sir." Yu Minmin got out of the plane and was immediately sent to a villa. She looked up to see where she was. It looked tropical on the outside. She thought for a while and continued looking for clues. When she saw a sign on the side, she realized that this was M Nation. She had been taken to M Nation. She was astonished. She held her belly and knew that her child was fine. She could only force herself to relax. However, she wondered if Gu Jingming had gone mad trying to find her by now. She also did not know what happened in C Nation such that so many people rushed to the resort and she was taken away. She was anxious as she looked outside. She could not wait like this. She could not sit and wait to be rescued. But she only just got here now, so she had to be obedient. She sat there and pretended to be weak. She watched as someone came in quietly to bring her food. She pretended to struggle to sit up. Coupled with that big belly, anybody would believe that she was really weak and frail now. When the person went out, he said worriedly to the other outside, "She'll be fine, right? She's heavily pregnant and she looks like she's dying." "What can happen? I only used a little drug." "Never mind. Keep an eye on her and don't let anything happen. The boss said that keeping her is of great use." "Should we get a doctor?" "Seriously, don't you think we have enough witnesses? Bringing in a doctor. Do you want to die?" "All right then. We'll call for one if we really have to. Keep an eye on her for now." Yu Minmin waited in the room. She could only look out through a small window to see if the outside was clear. She looked in every corner out the window to look for a way out. At the same time, she looked around the room to see if she could find anything useful. A typical rich man's daughter would definitely not know all these, but Yu Minmin was an independent child. Growing up in a family that had nothing, she quickly found a cupboard and took it apart. She slowly took out the nails that held it together. Things made of metal were always useful. There were also more metal parts in the drawers and she took them out. Just doing this alone took more than 2 hours. When she was done, she kept these things with her and continued to play dead. Time passed incredibly slow. Every minute here felt like an eternity. She only thought that if she was here, then where was Gu Jingming? Gu Jingming stayed in his room and had not eaten or slept for a day and night. Linda did not dare to interrupt. She could only look on. Rumors of the president were already spread so widely that they had to be suppressed. But at the same time, Madam President was taken away and this was the fatal blow to Gu Jingming. Linda could only have the entire glazed tile palace on lockdown before she sent people to search for Yu Minmin. There was no news yet. Linda was still communicating with Gu Jingze's side and neither did they have any updates. They could only wait like this and clear up the trivial matters first. Meanwhile, Lin Che waited at home. She watched people go back and forth busily as they secured the entire Gu residence multiple times. Lin Che rested there when Gu Xinian walked in. She held her hand out to him and said, "Nianian, come here." Gu Xinian asked, "Mama, did something happen?" Lin Che sighed and looked at Gu Xinian. She knew that she could never hide anything from Nianian. Lin Che said, "Yes, something did happen and you probably saw all there was too. But don't you worry. Dad will handle it. We just need to wait patiently here. Don't cause any more trouble for Dad." Gu Xinian nodded and asked, "Do you want me to go snoop around?" Lin Che initially wanted to laugh at his little adult demeanor, but she suddenly recalled Gu Jingze once said that Gu Qigong assigned the best secret service to Gu Xinian. Lin Che said, "I don't see why not. I just want to know what's going on outside." Gu Xinian nodded and said, "Mama, don't you worry. You have 2 brave men protecting you. Nothing will happen to you and my little brother inside." Lin Che laughed and looked at Nianian. "How do you know it's a brother?" Gu Xinian said, "If it's a sister, I don't want her." Chapter 1060. Either you die or she dies. "Ha, why? I don't like girls." Lin Che said, "I'm anxious about your future now that you've said this. You don't hate your younger sister just because the girl you liked became your younger sister, right?" Gu Xinian's ears turned slightly red. Childish. However, Lin Che took note of this and instinctively laughed even more. Gu Jingze was really similar to his father. His ears would turn red first when he was embarrassed. Lin Che said to Gu Jingze, "Nianian, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl yet. It's not something I can control either. Be a bit more open-minded too. If it really is a girl, I can only say that you have bad luck. You really can't say you don't want her around because no matter what, she's your younger sister." Gu Jingze sighed, looking as if he had nothing else to live for in life. Lin Che said, "I haven't asked you yet. After returning to C Nation, what do you think of it? Do you think this place is better, or do you prefer Seattle?" "It doesn't matter to me," Gu Jingze said. Lin Che looked at him. "You can't put it like that either. Do you feel happier living here or living there?" Gu Jingze mulled over it and said, "It's different. In Seattle, I can go out anytime to play, but here, I have quite a lot of people following me around, so it's not very convenient. But over here, there are many people to play with me. In Seattle, it's just Union. I think that if you add everything up, they're about the same, so there's nothing for me to compare to." Lin Che smiled and patted him. "Well then, is your relationship with the other children in the kindergarten good?" "Very good, but sometimes, they're afraid of me." Gu Jingze continued, "Union is the only one not afraid of me, but Union doesn't play computer games, so it's better for you to give birth to a younger brother. All younger sisters don't know how to play with computers." Lin Che felt a little sad as well. Those children in his kindergarten were probably afraid of him because of who he was. Although they would envy him and would play with him, they may not trust him genuinely. Seeing that he had so many people trailing after him, it was likely that they felt that he was different from them. But this child was definitely going to be different from the majority of people in the future. Lin Che could only hope that he could live an ordinary life while he was young, because it may really be impossible for him to return to an ordinary life in the future even if he wanted to. In comparison, Nianian was smarter than she was. He knew that there were advantages and disadvantages to everything. Seattle had its good points and C Nation had its good qualities too. They could not be compared on equal terms. But Lin Che was a little idealistic and wanted the best of both worlds. Lin Che felt that in some aspects, she had to learn from Nianian. Meanwhile, Yun Kuoshan asked, "The news of Madam President's disappearance hasn't even gotten out?" "Yes, the Gu family suppressed the news." Fine, but it won't be easy to let others find out about this for the time being." "What about Lin Che? Is she still at home and resting?" "Yes, it seems that Lin Che still doesn't know about Yu Minmin's disappearance." "Ha," Yun Kuoshan smiled and said, very good. Get someone to show Lin Che photos of Yu Minmin and tell her that Yu Minmin is still alive, but she may not be alive for much longer." Lin Che. At the root of it, she was the reason that the Yun family had fallen to its present state. How could the Yun family let her off, let her live so blissfully, and become the matriarch of the Gu family so easily? Lin Che was still lying down at home and resting. But her phone suddenly vibrated. She froze. She tapped on her phone and saw that someone had sent her some photos for no reason. She felt a deep sense of uneasiness. With a bad feeling, she swiped open her phone hesitatingly. The photos inside were of Yu Minmin. Yu Minmin lay there in a drowsy state. Yu Minmin's stomach. There was a knife placed in front of Yu Minmin's stomach. What did this mean? Lin Che looked at the knife blade before looking at her stomach. A chill ran through her heart for a moment. Wasn't this a blatant threat? What were they going to do with Yu Minmin? What were they going to do to her stomach? When had these photos been taken? Were they contemporaneous photos? What exactly had happened to Yu Minmin? Just then, her phone rang. As Lin Che looked at her phone, the sense of uneasiness in her heart intensified even more. She subconsciously felt that this call would not be a simple one. But when she thought of those ghastly photos, she had no choice but to answer the call immediately. "I guess you saw the photos." The voice on the phone was low and terrifying. "Who are you? What are you trying to do? Just tell me what your objective is." "Great. Straightforward people speak frankly. Come out now and I'll take you to her." "Come alone." Otherwise, you know that even if she can take the pain, the child in her stomach may not be able to do the same. Think about it on your own. Lin Che's heart wrenched. Because she was also pregnant now, of course, she knew the feeling. The child was the most fragile, especially at a time like this. Lin Che responded, if I go with you, wouldn't I be handing my own life over to you? I'm not that stupid. If you really wanted to kill Minmin, you wouldn't be keeping her alive right now. Yes, you're right. We won't kill Madam President right now. Of course, her name is very useful. But as I said, she may be able to take the torture, but the child in her womb may not be able to. I can definitely keep her alive but get rid of the child in her womb, holding only her hostage. Or, I could kill her but take the child out beforehand. Aren't both options viable? Lin Che could not believe how these people could be so cruel. But she was also aware that these people were definitely not ordinary kidnappers. They were absolutely not afraid of death either. They used brutal methods and could forsake everything for profit. Because there was a possibility that this was not related to a personal grudge but to national affairs. Thus, they could definitely be unscrupulous and brutal too. Good lord, Minmin was in such danger. What should she do? Closing her eyes, Lin Che could only respond, fine. What do you want me to do? Just walk out of the GU residence. Lin Che did not have any other choice. She could not think of anything else except Yu Minmin's safety at the moment. She could not watch them slice Yu Minmin's womb open. She found it cruel, just thinking about it. If it really happened, she could not take that risk. As for herself, if something actually happened to her, Gu Jingze would probably be sad for a long time. But fortunately, she had already left Nianian to Gu Jingze. Even if she died, Nianian would be on his mind. For Nianian's sake, he would probably live on. She did not leave anything behind. After thinking for some time, she left a few photos of Yu Minmin here. After that, she drew in a deep breath and walked out alone. Madam, is something wrong? No need to follow me. I'll get Dongzi and the rest to come with me, she said to the maids at the doorway.